to grieve on their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. Break our hearts once again. Help us to remember when we were only children hoping for a friend. Won't you look around? These are the lives that the world has forgotten, waiting for doors of our hearts and our homes to open. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name in victory. When we love the least of these, when we love the least of these. If not us, who will be like Jesus to the least of these? If not us, tell me who will be like Jesus to the least of these. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love.
Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for Saturday, October 14th, 2017, 8th year of Chungi, the 8th month, and the 25th day of the month by the Holy Calendar, Heavenly Calendar. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Robert Carvel, a retired entertainment sound expert, right?
Yes. Sound technician.
Sound technician expert. Now you worked for ABC, or
I still do, actually, on a part-time basis. I work
for ABC.
For ABC Good Morning America.
American Money, yeah. See,
in Times Square.
Yeah, so he's the real deal. All right, let's get to the weather this morning. It's 57 degrees and cloudy in the Cheongguk area, and it's going up to 73 degrees today. So nice, pleasant, and warmer than yesterday. And then tomorrow it's going to get even warmer, 78 degrees. But then on Monday, though, it's going to fall off a cliff, and from 78 degrees on Sunday, it's going to fall back down to 60 degrees. That's going to be quite a change, and especially Monday evening, Monday night into Tuesday morning, it's going to go down to 33 degrees according to the forecast. So maybe in some areas there may be some frost. And then it'll be cool. But then later in the week, it's going to come back up to 70s. So it's going to be a kind of a roller coaster ride the next week or so in terms of the temperatures. Let's go to our Rima this morning. From the Bible, I'm at Psalm 116, 19 verses, so I'll read the whole psalm. I love the Lord because he hath heard my voice and my supplications. Because he hath inclined his ear unto me, therefore will I call upon him as long as I live. The sorrows of death compassed me, and the pains of hell get hold of me. And I found trouble and sorrow. Then called I upon the name of the Lord. O Lord, I beseech thee, deliver my soul. Gracious is the Lord, and righteous, yea, our God is merciful. The Lord preserveth the simple. I was brought low, and he helped me. Return unto thy rest, O my soul, for the Lord hath dealt bountifully with thee. For thou hast delivered my soul from death, mine eyes from tears, and my feet from falling. I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living. I believed, therefore have I spoken. I was greatly afflicted. I said in my haste, all men are liars. What shall I render unto the Lord for all his benefits toward me? I will take the cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows unto the Lord now in the presence of all his people. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. O Lord, truly I am thy servant, and thy son of thine handmaid. Thou hast loosed my bonds. I will offer to thee the sacrifice of thanksgiving, and will call upon the name of the Lord. I will pay my vows unto the Lord now in the presence of all his people. In the courts of the Lord's house, in the midst of thee, O Jerusalem, praise ye the Lord. Today happens to be the 67th anniversary of the True Father's liberation from the Hungnam death camp in North Korea, North Korea. He was imprisoned there in 1948. It was a prison that the general life expectancy of prisoners was about 6 months. Prior to near that prison camp, there was a fertilizer factory that the Japanese had built during the colonial period, and there were great mounds of fertilizer, and the prisoners were marched there each morning to shovel the fertilizer, the mounds of fertilizer, and then put them into sacks, so that the sacks could be loaded onto ships and exported to the Soviet Union in payment for Soviet support. And they had to deal with chemicals that ate into their skin and also destroyed their lungs. But Father was there for well over 2 years until the Allied forces well, while he was in the prison, the Korean War began, and first, of course, the North Korean army marched all the way down to the near Busan, and just a corner of the peninsula was remaining. But then General MacArthur, Douglas MacArthur, staged the famous Incheon invasion behind the enemy lines, and then cut across the peninsula. And where they were going up, the UN forces and all the South Korean forces were marching up the peninsula then, and on their way up, then they bombarded the Hungnam prison camp and destroyed its walls, so that our father could walk out of that prison. And once out of that prison, he walked. Hungnam is on the east coast of the peninsula, and he walked west to Pyongyang. And once in Pyongyang, where he had been the capital of North Korea, where he had been evangelizing prior to the war, and he had prior to his imprisonment, he had a congregation there, and so he went to Pyongyang to try and find the people that he had left there. But already the Pyongyang, because it had been liberated, that it was under Allied control at that time, UN control, and so most of the people in Pyongyang were already going south as refugees, and his because already the communist regime prior to the war had made clear that they were quite antagonistic towards religion, especially religious people in particular, escaped to the south. And so the only people who were still there that father could find were Wonpil Kim, who was just a boy at that time, a teenager, and also Park Chung-hwa, who was actually a former North Korean army officer who had been placed in Hungnam prison for some sort of crime while he was in the military, while he was in the North Korean army. But he was a fellow prisoner, but he was kind of a special status because he was former North Korean army, and so he was kind of an overseer or among the prisoners. And so father knew him from then, but his leg had been broken, and so his family had left him behind to die because he was basically an escaped prisoner. So if the North Korean army came back down and reconquered Pyongyang, then he would be killed. And they had all gone south and left him there to die. So father carried him and took Wonpil Kim and headed south towards Seoul, and then he spent a little bit of time in Seoul, a couple of weeks I think, and then the North Korean army and the Chinese entered the war in October. And so also Seoul was evacuated then on January 4th of 51, and so and father was also headed towards Busan, and he arrived in Busan, and then once in Busan, of course, established his base, sort of a cardboard and mud hut, and then on a hill overlooking Busan, and then spent a year writing the Wolli Wonbon, the what we call the original Divine Principle, I guess, or that's the original text of his revelation. He had already written something in North Korea as well, but he had put it in someone's care, and that person lost it, and so basically this was kind of a rewriting of that revelation. And then, so he spent a year writing the Divine Principle. Well, that's the Wolli Wonbon, and then once that year was up, in May of 1952, of course, famously, he met his first disciple in South Korea, who, of course, is our true mother. So today is that very important day in the history of our faith movement, of Father's providential work, the 67th anniversary of his liberation from the Hungnam prison. In this psalm, I think, is appropriate for that. It talks about suffering, but also God breaking the bonds. For thou hast delivered my soul from death, and mine eyes from tears, and my feet from falling. I walked before the Lord in the land of the living. I believed, therefore have I spoken. I was greatly afflicted. I said in my haste, all men are liars. What shall I render unto the Lord for all his benefits towards me? And in the Cheonsongyung, I'm reading from the book on earthly life in the spirit world, chapter 5. This is page 690. No sword or power can break the bond between you and the true parents, not even the power of Satan. No, let's go back and translate that without the S. No sword or power can break the bond between you and the true parent, not even the power of Satan. Why? Because this bond possesses a special authority to break through all of today's problems and bring salvation to humankind, and because of the power of that humankind has historically desired, has been concentrated in this bond or stronghold. Thus, no historical concentration of power would be strong enough to break this relationship. In this way, the true parent is the one whom God has sent forth as historical sacrifice for the purpose of doing away with all evil and making a new victorious beginning based on a new bond. I think in most cases, even though we now have a true mother, it's still appropriate to translate champumo in the singular in most cases, especially here where it says, in this way the true parent is the one whom God has sent. God only sends one. God only sends one. And it is the mission of that one whom he has sent, that is the true parent whom he has sent, to find a woman in the world and then raise her up to the point, and educate her to the point, train her to the point where she goes through the eight vertical stages, and that Reverend Yu Jong spoke about on September 24th, and finally become the bride of God. As our true mother, Kang Hyung-shir, has now done. And it's amazing that was the first disciple whom he had met, Father, the true parent had met, has now accomplished that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful victory. Are you inspired to say anything about this? If not, we'll go on.
I was very inspired to find Mrs. Kang being put into the position of the true mother, and really moved the night of Hyunjinim's birthday, when after he had been speaking for about 4 hours, he turns to her and says, "Would you like to say anything?" And the very first thing she does after all that time, in the middle of the night, she gets up. She starts speaking in a language which is not her own, in Japanese, just really loving and comforting and caring for the Japanese members that were here. And I thought, this is really a true mother's heart. She so exemplifies a true mother's heart of giving and loving. When you compare that to the other one who gets up there and says, "Do you know who I am? You're so lucky to be in my presence." It's such a contrast.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Thank you. Today being that anniversary of a father's release, or not, I don't want to say release, because it was a liberation and not a release. General Alexander Haig used to say, I had a part in planning that mission to bomb Hungnam prison, I think he used to say. And so he kind of claimed that he was had a direct hand in liberating Father from Hungnam prison. And I know, some of the historically minded in our faith movement have really tried to track down exactly how, exactly who. Was it the South Korean military? Was it the Americans? Who exactly liberated Father? They've tried to track it down, and
It's a very interesting.
There are some various theories, but anyway, Father was liberated on this day. That's the one thing that we know. And of course, one thing that is very closely associated with Father's experience in Hungnam is the national anthem of Cheonryukuk. And I wanted to go through because True Mother also mentioned this in her when she spoke again at her 90th birthday on October 9th at the Skytop Lodge.
And she sang it too.
And she sang it the way that Father used to sing it. She said that when she would go up to that, because she made several trips. The first trip, I guess, was on, what was it, May 10th, I think she said, was the actual day that she first met Father in 1951. But she would go there from time to time. And after that, and as she approached the hut, she would hear Father singing alone inside the hut. And he was singing this song, the Blessing of Glory, that we now know as our national anthem of Cheonryukuk. And he would sing it in a way that she said was very sad or melancholy, a very melancholic way. And she sang the last verse of that in the way that he sang it. She remembers him singing it, and also spoke about some of the words in the final verse, the verse 4. But I thought it would be appropriate to go through the entire song today, the 4 verses. And as I was translating for True Mother on October 9th, it struck me that because of the difference in translation, because of the difference in the words between the English version and the Korean version, that maybe the audience was not really understanding what she was referring to. I mean, because I'm not going to knock the translation of the national anthem, because translating poetry is very, very different from translating prose. You're not really translating words; you're translating inspiration. And of course, the words are similar, but you can't really be tied down so much as you are in translating prose, because when you're translating, especially if you're going to fit it to the same notes, it has to be the rhythm has to be the same, the number of syllables or something like that has to be the same. You can't have a lot of difference in the number of syllables, because you got a certain amount of notes and so forth. And so it's quite different. But I think as I go through this translating, giving a more literal translation of the words, I think you'll see that the words are similar, but perhaps not the same. But so when someone starts explaining the words as True Mother did, people who only know the English version may be a little bit confused or not really connecting to what she's saying. So I wanted to go through that today. Starting with verse 1. And actually, if people are interested in learning Korean, I think a good place to start, after you learn the alphabet, might be to just memorize the national anthem, so that you can sing it in Korean when we have these celebrations several times a year. I think that would be a good thing. Step after that might be to memorize the family pledge in Korean. But baby steps. Well, this isn't exactly a baby step. This would be a big step in itself. Anyway, the first verse begins, 저 멀리 비춰주는 영광의 광채. So in Korean, you often have a noun phrase, so a whole bunch of words, and then that all modify a noun at the end. And this is what this is. The noun here at the end is a 광채. The 광채 is a light, but it is a splendorous light, I would say. It's light that is, just sparkling. It's just and it's 영광의 광채. So it's this splendorous light of glory, and this splendorous light of glory is a shining far off. So the splendorous light of glory shines far off. So it paints a picture in my mind immediately of Father sitting or standing somewhere and watching as the sun is rising over the horizon. The glorious splendor of the rising sun. That is far off. And then the second line, 힘차게 소생하라 자유의 생명. 생명 is an interesting word because it's a word that I looked up a bit, and it's used in Korean Christianity to mean a living soul, a soul that has been, inspired by the gospel, by the word of God, as opposed to a dead soul, a soul that has not yet been saved and is in need of salvation. So a living soul, 자유의 생명. 자유, of course, is freedom. 자유의 souls of freedom. So, and the first part of that line, 힘차게 소생하라, means to come alive with vigor. Come alive with vigor. Living souls of freedom. And 이강산 절구까지 깨어 일어나. So he's saying, these living souls all over the landscape. Gangsan is literally mountains and rivers and the valleys. So all you living souls come alive with vigor. And then the refrain is 소생의 그 광채를 길이 빛내리. 소생의 그 광채. 광채 is, of course, we had that in the first line. Again, the splendorous light of your coming alive. Let it shine forever. And then again, the same words. Let the splendorous light of your coming alive shine forever. That's the first verse. And the second verse is, again, painting a picture with a noun phrase in the first line. But here, the noun here is 영광의 존재. So 존재 is a being or existence or being. And a 영광 of glory. So being of glory, existence of glory. So of course that's referring to God. So he says 불러서 찾으려는. So God is calling out, is searching. He's in search, calling out and searching. It doesn't say for what, but you can immediately understand that he's searching for these living souls that have come alive. And it says that more clearly later on in the third line, but you can see that that's what's happening in the first line. 위대한 그 모습, that is his visage or appearance, as this greatness, that God in his greatness, 천주를 품고, God is embracing the cosmos. 천주, of course, is a word that, Father, as I often say, Father was a translator. He took the word of God. He took the word that word that is in God, that is not expressed in any fallen language or in any human language, but that word that is in God, and he translated that into a human language, into Korean. And of course, the Korean language, was prepared over the centuries by God to be able to receive that word, but still, it is a fallen language. It is it represents the experience of a particular ethnic group of people over the centuries, and so it is not capable of completely expressing God's word. So what Father did oftentimes was that he gave new meanings to words that already existed, and 천주 is one of those. And in English, we translate it as cosmos, and we also, in English, give it a completely new meaning. The meaning is the combination of the spirit world and the physical world. There's no word actually to express that. So we take the word cosmos and we give it that new specialized meaning in terms of Father's teaching. So in this line, it says God has the greatness the greatness with his appearance of greatness embraces the cosmos. And 깨어난 그 생명이 어디 있는가? So these living souls that have awakened, he's searching 어디 있는가? Where are they? He's trying to search where they are. He's calling out, searching, and embracing the universe, looking all over the universe, cosmos. Searching all over the cosmos to find these living souls that have awakened. And then the refrain: how am I to attend him as he does this search. And so notice that Father is talking about his personal relationship with God. Of course, Father is the Word Word that became flesh. The Word, God's Word, became flesh 2,000 years ago, and that was Jesus. And then Jesus said that he would return, and he did return in 1920 when the Word of God became flesh again in our true Father, our true parent, Sun Myung Moon. But Father, though, is speaking here. He was fully God and fully human, and here he's, I think, speaking in terms of his as a human being, and his relationship with God. So how am I to attend God as he goes through this searching the cosmos for these living souls? And then in the third verse, he speaks of himself as being, so I, as one existence, has awoken from death. So in a world of death, I in the world, basically in the world of death, death all around. All the other souls are dead, but I've awoken. So when I'm embraced in the one who awoke me, then I've experienced his eternal love, and I can hear the voice, the comfort. I can hear his comforting voice. So may we enjoy that forever, and experience the glory. That's the refrain there in verse 3. Verse 4 now is the one that our true mother focused on when she spoke on August 9th. And this sort of brings it all together, where he says, it is by his grace that I am embraced in glory, and it is by his grace that I am intoxicated in love. Intoxicated, I think, is a very difficult word to fit into a English poem or song, isn't it? So I'm not sure if there's another word that can do that, but the idea of being intoxicated in love, that is by his grace I am intoxicated in love. Somehow it would be nice if there were a way to express that in English. So it's by his grace that I'm embraced in glory, and by his grace I'm intoxicated in love. I will try to raise him up so as to repay. But I cannot help but feel that I am insufficient. So that is those are the words of sort of a rough translation, more literal translation of that poem, which we sing as our national anthem.
Very beautiful. It's very enlightening.
It's a little bit different, isn't it, from
Yes,
the English? Yes.
Yeah.
But I think I think the English is also pretty good. I don't know if it can be improved or not. But, if someone wants to improve on it, they can certainly do that. Father never, or rarely, I would say, Father rarely approved an English translation of any of his words. Yeah. Very rare. It did happen sometimes. I know there are some speeches. One time I translated a speech for Father, and he spent the entire night checking the translation.
Wow.
Going through a dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
And the next morning at breakfast, not me, but there was always some Korean leader between me and Father.
Right.
He would have that Korean leader at breakfast say, "So, how come this was translated this way?" Yeah, but it was very, and I don't think he ever approved of the translations of any of the holy songs. I don't think they ever have his stamp of approval. So they can be changed if someone wants to, but it would take someone with, ideally, someone with poetic ability, someone who and music actually, someone who is experienced in writing songs in English. If that person could learn Korean, So it should be done by a native English speaker who has experience writing songs in English and has maybe some musical training, for that person to learn Korean enough that they can understand the Korean words.
It sounds like you.
I have no musical training. I am not a poet, and I know it.
But you have a deep understanding of the Korean meaning, which is a critical aspect.
Well, so someone like me might be able to assist such a person, but I would not be the one. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Okay. All right. I don't know if Rio is playing the national anthem right now. I don't know if that's going out over the internet or not. It is? Okay, well, I think about time that we took a break, though. All right?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Let's take a break, and we'll be back in a minute and start going through the news from a Cheongguk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, October 14th, 2017. Tim Elder sitting in for the second King of Cheongguk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Robert Carvel, retired, no, not semi-retired, I guess, right? Semi-retired sound entertainment sound technician.
Yes.
Yes. Today's the 67th anniversary of a father's liberation from a Hungnam prison, and it's also the anniversary of a number of blessings, starting with the 6,000 couple blessing in 1982. So I'm in that blessing, so yes. Of course, it's the 6,000 couples that are causing so much of the problem right now. Yang Chang-sik Yang is a 6,000 couple. Hwang Sung-jo is a 6,000 couple. But there are some of us who are on the good side. I mean, some on the dark side, some on the good side. I'm afraid that a lot of this providential confusion has been fomented by members of the 6,000 couple blessing, I'm afraid. But we're coming. We're coming along, don't worry. But also a bunch of several other blessings were held on October 14th. In fact, I think starting around 2010, or maybe before that, Father started holding a blessing on every year at October 14th. I remember he would do these generally on the campus of Sun Moon University in Korea. So there are a bunch of people celebrating anniversaries today. So congratulations to us all. All right. 35th anniversary for those of us who were in the 1982 blessing in the Chamsil Gymnasium. That was a lot of people. 12,000 people. Actually, it was not exactly 6,000 to be, transparent and honest and everything like that. Father said in his prayer, he gave the exact number in his prayer. and it was 5,008 or 900 something like that. But we call it the 6,000 couple, and he called it the 6,000 couple blessing. That was a lot of people marching in. Anyway, let's get to the news. The United States announced Thursday it is pulling out of UNESCO. About time.
About time. Very good
Yay,
news.
Trump. The United States announced Thursday it is pulling out of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Agency because of what Washington sees as its anti-Israeli bias.
Oh, my gosh.
Who'd have thunk? That's been going on for a long time. And a need for fundamental reform in the agency. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel plans to follow suit. While the Trump administration had been preparing for a likely withdrawal from UNESCO for months, the timing of the State Department statement was unexpected. The Paris-based agency's executive board is in the midst of choosing its new chief, with Qatar's Hamad bin Abdulaziz Al Khawari leading the heated election heading into Friday's final vote. Outgoing Director General Irina Bokova expressed profound regret at the U.S. decision and tried to defend UNESCO's reputation. That's a tough job. The organization is best known for its World Heritage Program to protect cultural sites and traditions, but also works to improve education for girls, promote understanding of the Holocaust horrors, and to defend media freedom. Ms. Bokova called the U.S.'s planned departure a loss for the United Nations family and for multilateralism. It's very interesting. People in the United Nations actually keep talking about the United Nations family as they seek to destroy families around the world. That's it. But it's their not the God-made family, but their family. The U.S. and UNESCO matter to each other more than ever now with, quote, the rise of violent extremism and terrorism, unquote, she said. Who's doing that?
Same people.
Is it Israel? Is it Israel?
No.
It's not.
It's
not. Yeah, it's the other guys. The U.S. stopped funding UNESCO after it voted to include Palestine as a member state in 2011, but the State Department had maintained a UNESCO office and sought to weigh in on policy behind the scenes. The U.S. now owes about $550 million in back payments. In a statement, the State Department said the decision will take effect December 31st, 2018, and that the U.S. will seek a permanent observer status instead. It cited U.S. belief in, quote, the need for fundamental reform in the organization, unquote. Mr. Netanyahu said Thursday that Israel also plans to withdraw from the agency, saying it had become a, quote, theater of the absurd because instead of preserving history, it distorts it, unquote. It's a good point. Israel has been irked by resolutions that diminish its historical connection to the Holy Land and have instead named ancient Jewish sites as Palestinian heritage sites. Praising President Trump's decision as brave and moral, Netanyahu said he has ordered Israeli diplomats to prepare for Israel's withdrawal from the organization in concert with the Americans. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, also praised Washington's move as heralding, quote, a new day at the UN, where there is a price to pay for discrimination against Israel, unquote. Quote, the United States stands by Israel and is a true leader for change at the UN, unquote, Mr. Danon said. Quote, the alliance between our two countries is stronger than ever, unquote. U.S. officials said Secretary of State Rex Tillerson made the decision, and it was not discussed with other countries. The officials were not authorized to be publicly named discussing the issue. Nikki Haley, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, called UNESCO's July designation of Hebron's Old City and the Tomb of the Patriarchs as Palestinian territory the latest of many foolish actions that have made the agency a chronic embarrassment. Ms. Haley also criticized UNESCO for keeping Syrian dictator Bashar Assad on a UNESCO Human Rights Committee even after his murderous crackdown on peaceful protesters. The United States has pulled out of UNESCO before. The Reagan administration did it in 1984 because it viewed the agency as mismanaged, corrupt, and used to advance Soviet interests. The U.S. rejoined in 2003. The State Department informed Bekova it intends to stay engaged at UNESCO as a non-member observer state on non-politicized issues, including the protection of World Heritage Sites, advocating for press freedom, and promoting scientific collaboration and education. We will be carefully watching how the organization and the new Director General steers the agency, Chargé d'Affaires Chris Hagedorn, the ranking U.S. representative to UNESCO, told the Associated Press. Ideally, it steers it in a way that U.S. interests and UNESCO's mandate will converge. UNESCO's 58-member executive board plans to select Bekova's successor from among 3 finalists remaining from the field of 7 candidates under consideration at the beginning of the week. Along with Al-Khawari, Qatar's former culture minister, the finalists are Audrey Azoulay, a former culture minister in France, and former Egyptian government minister Mushira Khattab. The board's pick then goes to the full UNESCO General Assembly next month for final approval. So that is actually from the Christian Science Monitor that I was just reading, and there was an Associated Press article. And here's a Reuters article, maybe a little bit about the future of UNESCO after the U.S. withdrawal. In the modernist but faded headquarters of UNESCO, the UN's cultural agency on Paris's elegant left bank, more than a few diplomats wandered the corridors on Friday, wondering if the organization has a future. The agency, founded in the ashes of World War II to protect the common cultural inheritance of humanity, was due to elect a new head later in the day, but a sudden announcement that the United States was quitting over anti-Israel bias meant that whoever wins the top job would inherit a body in turmoil, with huge questions over its future funding and mission. I think it's a catastrophic decision, said Daniel Rondeau, a former French envoy to the body. It's a fracture that seriously jeopardizes the very nature of UNESCO, its universal dimension, and the very concept of multilateralism. Well, it's that concept of multilateralism that many of us have a problem with. Mm-hmm. That is, it's a concept of a centralization of power on an international level. And UNESCO, I think, of course, UNESCO with its takeover by Arab nations and left-wing countries that really want to be anti-American and therefore anti-Israel, anti-Judeo-Christianity, really is the whole UN system needs to go down. But UNESCO is certainly one of the more egregious aspects of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Officially known as the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO is best known for designating and protecting archaeological and heritage sites from the Galapagos Islands to the tombs of Timbuktu. Most of its activities are uncontroversial, but when it comes to, say, resolutions about how religious sites should be run in Jerusalem, every word is studied for accusations of bias. For some of its diplomats, Washington's decision to quit represented a corner being turned and puts even more pressure on whoever is elected to lead it. This is the most critical election. There can't be 4 more years like this, said a Western diplomat, bemoaning the leadership of outgoing director Irina Bokova of Bulgaria, whose critics say she failed to persuade member states to pay their dues and stop politicizing UNESCO's work. At the heart of its recent problems is a financing crisis since 2011, when UNESCO voted to admit Palestine as a full member state, and Washington responded by halting payment of its annual $80 million in dues. The United States and Israel were among just 14 of 194 members to vote against Palestine's membership. And Washington says it favors an independent Palestinian state someday, but it must arise from negotiations, and admitting the Palestinians to international bodies beforehand hurts the peace process. Since then, Israel has regularly complained over resolutions about cultural sites in the West Bank and Jerusalem, arguing that they are worded to delegitimize the Jewish state. Israel's foes say it uses U.S. support to deflect bona fide criticism. Without U.S. money, UNESCO, which employs around 2,000 people worldwide, has been forced to cut programs, freeze hiring, and fill gaps with voluntary contributions. In 2007, its 2017 budget was about $326 million, almost half of its 2012 budget. We need to do less. We need to do less with less. We spent too long trying to do too much without the means, said a UNESCO official who declined to be identified. We need to sell ourselves better, but without funding, it's difficult to change our image, including the United States, which has some $542 million in arrears. The organization is owed about $650 million, according to figures on its website. At this stage, UNESCO officials still don't know if the United States will make up its arrears before it officially exits on December 31st, 2018. Other major contributors, such as Japan, Britain, and Brazil, have also yet to pay their dues for 2017, sometimes citing objections to the body's policies. Quote, the fact is that UNESCO was all about solidarity and creating a climate for peace between countries, but nations now use their dues to influence programs, said a UNESCO-based diplomat. That needs to change. Japan, for example, has threatened to withhold dues over the inclusion of the 1937 Nanjing massacre in the body's Memory of the World program. Russia and Ukraine have been at odds over Crimea, with Kiev accusing Moscow of trying to legitimize its annexation of the territory through UNESCO. Quote, whoever takes over at the helm has to tackle this head on. They need to find ways of getting nations to talk these issues through, but if they can't, then the Director General needs to be able to say no and kill these texts, unquote, said a second UNESCO-based diplomat. Unlike at the UN Security Council, where 5 powers wield veto, UNESCO takes decisions based on majority votes, either of its General Secretariat, that includes all 195 nations, or of the 58-member Executive Board. Israel says this creates a built-in majority for states that are hostile to it. Big countries like the United States, that provide most of the funding, say their single votes give them little input into how their money is spent. Prior to Thursday's U.S. decision to withdraw, UNESCO's board had tried to evade confrontation by voting to postpone divisive Israeli-Palestinian texts until April, diplomats said. All the candidates running to head UNESCO have vowed grassroots reforms in efforts to depoliticize the institution. The final candidates are 2 former cultural ministers from France and Qatar, but even the vote on a new boss is tinged with politics, since Egypt, which has also vied for the top post, and Qatar on the opposite sides in a diplomatic dispute in the Arab world. So that is what's happening with UNESCO. I think that sort of not too much attention has been paid to that in the press, but I think it's important to see that. So Reagan pulled out of UNESCO once. I'm not sure why the U.S. Chose to come back in 2003, but it's pulling out again. And yeah, it has something to do with Donald Trump's overall re-emphasis on Judeo-Christian values.
Yes. Which is becoming more and more difficult through the years to actually take that stand.
Right. You can't even say Merry Christmas anymore, right?
Well, but as I understand it, that's the thing to do now.
It is.
For good people, is to use the term Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays. Take a stand. Say
Take
Merry
a stand,
Christmas.
yes.
Yeah, support Christian values. Say Merry Christmas. But, yes.
But interestingly, CNN has this headline. Trump says, we are stopping cold the attacks on Judeo-Christian values.
Huh?
We are stopping cold the attacks on Judeo-Christian values.
Oh, very good.
By Donald Trump. This is, interestingly, Donald Trump on Friday, a CNN article. President Donald Trump dove into America's culture wars on Friday, touting his administration for returning moral clarity to our view of the world and ending attacks on Judeo-Christian values.
Very good.
Trump, 9 months into his presidency, has found it harder to get things done than the ease with which he made promises on the campaign trail, making speeches to adoring audiences like Fridays in Washington's in Washington, key to boosting the president's morale. And the audience at the Values Voter Summit, an annual social conservative conference, didn't fail to deliver. Quote, "We are stopping cold the attacks on Judeo-Christian values," unquote, Trump said to the applause before slamming people who don't say Merry Christmas. Quote, "They don't use the word Christmas because it is not politically correct," unquote, Trump said, complaining that the department stores will use red and white Christmas decorations, but say Happy New Year.
Happy holidays.
"We're saying Merry Christmas again," he says. The comment drew thunderous applause. So this was his speech at the Value Voters Summit yesterday. Heated debates over the war on Christmas have raged for years, with many on the right complaining that political correctness has made it less acceptable to say Merry Christmas. Trump has seized on these feelings, regularly telling primarily religious audiences that his presidency has made it acceptable to start saying Merry Christmas again. You can go into a department store. When was the last time you saw a Merry Christmas? You don't see it anymore, Trump said on the campaign trail. They want to be politically correct. If I'm president, you will see Merry Christmas in the department stores. Believe me, believe me. America is a nation of believers, and together we are strengthened and sustained by the power of prayer, Trump said. And this is not the first time Trump has addressed the group, and initially he was not universally well received. Speaking before the group in 2015, Trump got booed when he referred to Senator Marco Rubio, then a 2016 presidential candidate, as a clown. Trump, facing a difficulty in getting Congress to work with him on a host of issues, has focused more on his political base lately, catering to the conservative voters for vaulting him from reality TV star to president. This is CNN, all right?
Yes.
The president needled Congress on Friday. Congress forgot what their pledges are, he said about health care, faulting them for requiring the Trump administration to take a difficult route on repealing Obamacare. Most recently, Trump rolled back an Obamacare. Well, we'll get into that in a separate story. So Trump coming out in favor of Judeo-Christian values at the Value Summit yesterday. It'll be interesting to see what he does as Christmas comes closer. I'm sure he'll be tweeting Merry Christmas,
Yes.
not anything else. I'm sure he'll be tweeting that.
I wonder what color they'll be lighting up the White House.
Yes.
Because remember, Obama lit up the White House with the LGBT colors.
Oh, yeah?
So,
See, I wouldn't know that. You would know that. You're into lighting and stuff like that.
so let's see what color Trump lights up the White House during the Christmas season.
Red and green, I expect.
I would hope so.
Or red, white, and blue.
Oh, that'd be even better.
Yes. All right, let's take a break, and we'll be back in a minute or so with more news from a Chonigo perspective.
All right.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, October 14th, 2017. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk Hyungjin-moon, and I'm here with Mr. Robert Carvel, who during the break was starting to talk about something. And I really, when I experienced that in doing this kind of thing, that when the cameras go off, suddenly the guests get chatty. And I say, wait a second. No, don't say that now. Wait till the cameras come back on. So, Robert, you were saying something about Somme what?
Sonne Lumière.
Okay. What is that?
It's French, sound and light. I was first introduced to this way back when I was
And you were talking about it in terms of, we were wondering what colors the White House is going to be lit up on Christmas. Yes.
What it is I was first introduced to this in France, in the Loire-et-Cher region, when I was a teenager. It is a means of creating an effect, and oftentimes with a building, through the use of sound and lights. And you can do stories, you can do all kinds of things. And it's a very amazing thing. You can, to go at night to a location and have a show done with just sound and light. No actors, but just sound and light. And it's very exciting. So we got onto this topic through the concept of lighting up the White House.
Yes.
Obama, of course, had really desecrated the place by using the LGBT colors, the purples and rainbows and all that kind of thing. But I was just wondering, I was musing, what would Trump do? Would he try to light up the White House with some kind of Christmas, actual Christmas type lighting? And then you brought up the comment, well, what would that be? Red and green, or red, white, and blue? And maybe we could even do a Sonne Lumière, maybe of the Nativity, a sound and lights show of the Nativity. Of course, that would be really extreme. But Trump likes to be extreme, doesn't he?
Yes. But I think he also likes to leave the Judeo in the Judeo-Christian.
That's true.
Yeah, so I don't know if a nativity scene would quite qualify for that. I'm not sure.
That is a good point. And of course, we've got to think about politics too.
Yes. He is, after all, now a politician, like it or not.
Right.
Well, thank you. So this is, I guess, quite different from people putting lights in their houses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, the way, lights are being used for, to make political statements and social statements and other kinds of statements.
But also, I guess, Christmas time, maybe because it's the darkest time of the year, where, in the Northern Hemisphere at least, where we're around the time of the winter solstice, where the night is the longest. I guess that's one reason why people like to put lights on their houses. I'm thinking that's one reason.
Yes, but of course the Christmas tradition goes back way beyond Christmas, right? It goes back into some kind of
to pagan
times.
Yeah.
But it was that time of the year when people need a little bit of an uplift.
That's actually why the church decided on December 25th as the birthday of Jesus, even though they didn't know when it was. And now we know that actually definitely was not December 25th. But anyway, there was a pagan festival celebrating, I think, the sort of the return of the sun after the winter solstice, and sort of a superimposed Christmas on that. Yeah.
But it's an uplifting thing in the middle of the darkness of winter.
Yeah.
We're just showing here a sound and light show on the Reims Cathedral, which is a good demonstration of sound and light show. But it also, lighting gets used to make social statements. For example, the Empire State Building. They light that up with different colors to represent different things.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that happen.
Of late, it's been trying to use the gay colors and the LGBT colors and that kind of thing to be politically correct. But it'd be really nice to see, the red and the greens coming back, and the traditions of Christmas.
Yes. Well, if anyone is at the White House is listening this morning, I hope that you will call Mr. Robert Carvel to arrange that kind of a thing.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, we sort of started to get into the Obamacare situation. And of course, President Trump has made an important decision to cut off some of the funds that were being used to fund some of the insurance markets there. Drudge is actually linking to a story on CNBC that talks about the states are going to sue to block Trump's cutoff of Obamacare money as higher income customers face biggest hit. The attorneys general of New York, California, and other states are suing the Trump administration to prevent billions of dollars in subsidies to Obamacare insurers being cut off. So yeah, these were the money that was going to insurance companies, insurers. The money compensates insurers for discounts they give low-income customers by law. Premiums are expected to spike sharply, and some insurers could exit the market if the reimbursements are permanently ended. The attorneys general of New York, California, and more than a dozen other states moved Friday to sue the Trump administration to block the cutoff of critical Obamacare payments to health insurers. At the same time, health insurance experts warned that the administration's decision to end those federal payments will tend to financially harm middle-class Obamacare customers and comes at perhaps the worst possible time to take such an action. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman called President Donald Trump's termination of the so-called cost-sharing reduction reimbursements cruel, breathtakingly reckless, and unlawful. But actually, the legal status of these payments has been sort of in a kind of a gray area. I don't know if this article is going to point this out later. This is an effort to blow up the system, said Schneiderman. He accused Trump of lashing out in frustration over the inability of Republican allies in Congress to pass a bill that would repeal and replace Obamacare. We're not going to let him do it. We will be in court to defend these subsidies and fight this decision with everything we've got, Schneiderman said as he announced the lawsuit. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra said that in addition to his state and New York, 15 other states in the District of Columbia will be filing suit in federal court in the Northern District of California, which is, of course, the Ninth Circuit. So why are they doing it in California? Because that's where the Ninth Circuit is. In 1 week, the Trump administration has reopened the door to junk health insurance plans and cut off access to contraception for millions of women, said Becerra. Now they're refusing to comply with federal law in a way that will hike the cost of care for millions of Americans by withholding critical subsidies that make care more affordable. You know what? Let's go to Breitbart. I think we'll get a little bit more balanced view if we look at this same situation on Breitbart. Breitbart News. Where are we here? Okay, here we go. President Trump suspends Obamacare subsidies. So on CNBC, they're telling us how this is going to make the sky fall. Let's see if that's also true here. President Donald Trump suspended the Obamacare cost-sharing reduction program on Thursday, otherwise known as Obamacare subsidies, as part of a strategy to dismantle Obamacare. Then they have the statement. The cost-sharing reduction payment program gives health insurance companies subsidies to help cover the cost of low-income and high-cost patients on the Obamacare exchanges. Democrats and Republicans disagree on the impact of the impact that the subsidies would have on the individual health insurance market. The Congressional Budget Office argued in their analysis that rescinding the Obamacare subsidies would cause average premiums on the Obamacare exchanges to increase by roughly 20%, while a study commissioned by Senate Republicans and conducted by McKinsey & Company found that Obamacare insurance regulations such as community ratings, essential health benefits, and guaranteed issue were largely to blame for the recent spikes in premiums and subsidies and premiums and deductibles. Conservatives such as Senator Rand Paul and David Horowitz have argued that the cost-sharing reduction payment programs amount to a bailout fund for health insurance companies. See, this is a much more balanced article. It gives both sides, all right? Mm-hmm. The Trump administration's decision to eliminate the Obamacare subsidies arises on the same day President Trump signed an executive order to open up the health insurance market. The executive order will expand access to association health plans for small businesses, expand the length of short-term health insurance plans, and expand reimbursement accounts for small businesses. This will cost the United States government virtually nothing and will provide people great health care, President Trump explained. Senator Rand Paul praised the action as the biggest free market reform of health care in a generation, adding that the executive order will allow Americans to purchase health insurance across state lines. Wow, that's sounds, CNBC was telling us the sky is falling, but here we're learning that things are getting better. So we'll see what happens.
Well, it's the different point of view between big government having
Yes.
to control everything,
Yes.
or free market
Yes.
being allowed to enter into action and
Yes.
to take place. So it's the political perspective which we're seeing here.
Yes. We'll see what actually happens.
Yes.
Uh,
Free market has a tendency to work usually.
it does have that tendency.
I mean, that was why America became so great in the first place. Was
That's
because
right.
of free
That's
market.
right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. U.S. The government managed to get along with well below 10% of the GDP from the late 18th century, from the time that the country was founded. Most of certainly up to the Civil War and even after that for a time. But really in the 20th century, this idea, especially beginning really with, I think with FDR, was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was president from 1933 to 1945, really brought in this idea that the government has to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that he was a patrician. He was of course, it began before that, of course, with the income tax amendment and the Federal Reserve and all that. But I think FDR really, if you want to put a face on the beginning of big government, really that face has to be FDR's face. He was an elite, certainly. He coming from a rich family, and coming from this class, really a class of people who felt that there has to be a professional political class, like the aristocrats in Europe, in royal times in Europe, because the common people just don't know what they're doing, and they are not capable of ruling themselves. And so he, of course, with all those social programs that he brought in after the Depression began, really, and of course, Social Security was one thing that he started, and a lot of other things. Really, this idea that the government has to do everything. And I hope that we can get back to that. And under the Chonigu Constitution, we will, because under the Chonigu Constitution, the government revenues cannot exceed 10% of the GDP. And if you move a lot of the things into the private sector, then you can do that. Yesterday, our guest on the King's Report was talking about how FEMA is actually obstructing the recovery in Puerto Rico. That there are millions of tons. There's a lot of. They're actually when private organizations try to take relief aid to Puerto Rico, FEMA confiscates it.
Really?
And holds it, and does not distribute it. He was saying that his organization was his organization chartered a plane, took aid to Puerto Rico, and then they had to get the help of the Puerto Rican National Guard to prevent FEMA from confiscating their supplies.
Wow.
It's just this is a direct experience. He's not talking about something that's secondhand or anything. This is his organization's direct experience.
Amazing.
And when it gets back to this thing that any aid that is distributed has to be approved by FEMA. It must be approved of FEMA.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is FEMA doing? He said they're going around handing people applications to apply for federal aid. They're going around house to house handing people applications to apply for federal aid. And meanwhile, people are starving and they need water and they this and well, here's a piece of paper. And it's wild. It's wild.
Who runs FEMA then? Because
It's the DHS. It's the Department of Homeland Security.
right,
Yeah.
and they still have holdovers from the previous
Well,
administration.
it's not a matter of. I don't think it's a matter of holdovers from previous administrations. I think it's whole philosophy that the government has to do it. For example, this building. Before we bought this building, it was a Catholic church,
Yes.
and there was a food pantry here that in the back of our church that we use as office space now. And I was talking to the man who was the vice president of the program. The Catholic Church itself was not doing it. They actually sort of provided the space for a food a bank to come in and do their thing here. And I was talking to the vice president of that organization who was doing it, and he said that that by law they could only give people food that had been provided by the county. They could not give out. It was illegal for them to give out food that was donated by private individuals.
Well, that is ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. So what they would do is that they would take food donated by private individuals and they would put it on a separate table. All right?
Uh-huh.
We don't know what that is,
But you're
but
welcome to
we
go
don't.
look
But if you take it, we're not going to do anything. So that's how they distributed food from private individuals, because they themselves were restricted by law
Yeah,
from handing out anything that had not come from the county.
that is so crazy.
And this is the same thing with FEMA, and it's the same thing here.
I'd be interested to know what the difference is between Texas and Puerto Rico, because I've noticed the scurrilous media
Right.
are really picking on Puerto Rico and trying to use that to hit
right.
Trump. Whereas Texas, you don't hear anything about anymore.
Yeah. Yes, and also Florida too. Florida was also pretty. But Puerto Rico is an island, and so it's easier to control.
Right.
That's one thing. Yeah. You can't. I mean, if Texas, Florida, you have roads all over the place, and so it would be more difficult for FEMA to block everything. But in Puerto Rico, you got to go in there into an airport or through a ship or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, let's take a break, and we'll come back with more news from a Choniku perspective after this.
Okie doke.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for October 14th, 2017, a Saturday. And I'm Tim Elder sitting here with Mr. Robert Carvel, a sound and light as well, I think, expert, right?
No,
just sound
very
expert.
But anyway.
Sound expert. But you know a few things about light as well.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about Las Vegas this time. Another week, another timeline, or something like that. The police have changed the timeline again. The Las Vegas police again revised the timeline of the October 1 shooting at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino, saying on Friday that Stephen Paddock shot and wounded a security guard on his hotel floor about the same time he began to spray bullets on a country music concert below. So previously there was a 6-minute gap, and people were saying, how come you couldn't stop him during that 6 minutes? And so now they come back and say, oh, on second thought, that 6 minutes wasn't there. It's actually, it all happened at the same time. So the gunman shot the guard, Jesus Campos, around 10:05 p.m. Sheriff Joseph Lombardo of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department said at a brief news conference on Friday, not at 9:59 p.m., as he had told reporters on Monday, and not after Mr. Paddock stopped firing on the crowd at 10:15, as the sheriff said on October 4th. So this is our third timeline. The latest account came a day after MGM Resorts, which owns Mandalay Bay, disputed the police department's timeline, saying in a statement that the time of 9:59 had come from the hotel report manually created after the fact and was not accurate. The sheriff did not say on Friday whether Mr. Paddock had already begun shooting at the crowd from the window of his 32nd floor suite when he wounded Mr. Campos, or turned to the concert immediately afterward. MGM said in a statement that the gunman was firing at the concert grounds at the same time as, or within 40 seconds after, the time Mr. Campos first reported shots over his radio. Several other key facts remain unknown, including Mr. Paddock's motive and why he stopped shooting at the crowd. The new timeline still leaves about 12 minutes, including 10 minutes of effectively automatic gunfire, between when Mr. Campos reported the shots and when police arrived on the 32nd floor at 10:17 p.m. Timelines released by the police since the shooting have raised questions about their response and whether officers had enough time to address Mr. Campos' call and potentially stopped the massacre sooner. So we don't know his motive for starting to shoot. We don't know why he stopped shooting. I guess he stopped shooting because he killed himself. But why did he kill himself when he was not being directly challenged by police? I mean, he's got all these guns, and apparently he still had about 1,000 rounds of ammunition left in the room, so he didn't run out of ammunition. He still had guns. He still had ammunition. He still had. The police was not breaking down the door yet, and yet he suddenly decided to kill himself. Not really sure why that happened. No one's sure. And also, we had that acoustical analysis where this guy on YouTube presents a pretty good case for the theory that there is a second gunman.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been addressed here either.
He went into very great detail.
Yeah, talk
with
to us about
acoustic
that.
Analysis.
Yeah.
Just really carefully analyzing the acoustic signatures of the different things going on. The difference between the sound of the bullets hitting the ground and the initial report of the gunshot, because there's a difference in time between the velocity of the bullet and the difference and the ability for sound to travel through the air. Anyway, with his analysis, he was able to figure the distance of two different signatures, two different sound signatures, which give rise to the belief that there were actually two shooters. The one distance being about 400 yards, I believe, which is the Mandalay Bay area.
Yeah. So it would be consistent with someone firing from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay.
Yes, then that would be the one set of signatures. But there was an alternative set of signatures which indicate that another shooter was within 250 to 275 feet.
Right, so much closer than the Mandalay Bay.
Yes, and there were certain other areas which when you look at a circumference circle, you can see there's certain areas which could have been done from.
and he was encouraging the FBI or law enforcement authorities to look for expended brass at different locations where that shooter could have been,
Yeah.
or to look for expended bullets at the opposite side of the concert venue from those locations.
Yes.
Yes, so there may have been bullets that were coming, that were shot at that time that were coming from a different direction, not necessarily from the direction of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. And none of that apparently is being done, at least according to what we see here. So that's disappointing. And
Right. In fact, what is happening is the sheriff is getting up and saying, "Stop with the conspiracy theories." After having 2 days ago asked for help,
Yes.
can the public help us?
Yeah, he's getting the help, and he says,
Getting the help and getting the suggestions and getting the input, and now it's
Yeah.
like, it's conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's basically asking. I mean, he's asking for it by having all these different timelines, and then of course we have the the New York Times says that their headline is "Another Shift in Las Vegas Timeline Caps Day of Confusion," but that didn't cap it. There was another cap. The other cap was that the security guard disappeared. It gets better and better. I'm sorry, 58 people died. I shouldn't be laughing. I won't, but it's still ridiculous. Las Vegas security guard Jesus Campos disappears moments before TV interviews. This is on Fox. Yeah, this is wild. Where in the world is Jesus Campos? The Mandalay Bay security guard shot by Stephen Paddock in the moments leading up to the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history was set to break his silence Thursday night with 5 television interviews, including one on Fox News, Campos Union president said. Except when the cameras were about to roll and the media gathered in the building to talk to him, Campos reportedly bolted. And as of Friday morning, it wasn't immediately clear where he was. But no, don't do any conspiracy theories now.
Maybe somebody invited him out for a cup of coffee somewhere.
We were in a room and we came out and he was gone, Campos Union president told reporters, according to ABC News, Stephanie Wash. Oh, my goodness. You know, like I say, okay, the most innocent possible explanation is that he owes alimony somewhere, and he didn't want to appear on television.
Well, he just got cold feet.
So that's what I mean. Well, that's the same thing as cold feet. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there's something innocent explanations. There's something about something that he didn't, for some reason, he did not want to go on television.
He actually wasn't even licensed as a security person.
Well, Mandalay Bay didn't allow their security people to carry any weapons, so I don't know if they were needed a license. Without weapons, what is a security guard? It's just some guy walking around, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And
so
a
I mean,
radio to call in.
Right, radio to call in, yeah. So I don't know if he needed a license, but I think, here's my conspiracy theory, right? My conspiracy theory is that his name is not Jesus Campos, that he was. Here's my conspiracy theory, all right? He's in the country illegally, and he's working on forged documents because you can buy forged Social Security and stuff like that.
Sure.
So so he didn't want his face to go on television, and people to say, "Oh, wait a second, that's not Jesus Campos. That's Joe somebody or other,"
Jose.
or something like that. Or somebody say, "Hey, that's my third husband. He still owes me alimony." Something like that. So that's the most I think generous explanation that you can find. Other explanations, that someone was blackmailing him. We can have all sorts of theories. I mean, this just invites conspiracy theories.
Absolutely.
Campos is represented by the International Union of Security Police and Fire Professionals of America, which did not respond to requests for comment from Fox News earlier this week. Fox News' Sean Hannity tweeted out Campos, who was scheduled to appear on Hannity Thursday night, canceled his appearance. Little is known about Campos. See, with few pictures to emerge of the security guard and no apparent online footprint. See, I told you, he's got false papers surfacing to provide detail about one of the central figures in the mass shooting. There you go. See, no apparent online footprint. Hey, if you don't have an online footprint, you don't exist.
Right.
SPFPA President David L. Hickey told reporters new information about the timeline of the attack, for which Las Vegas police and MGM Resorts have given conflicting accounts. Doesn't dispute Campos is still a hero for saving a maintenance worker and possibly stopping additional shots, WASH reported. MGM Resorts issued a statement Thursday to correct some of the misinformation that has been reported. We know that shots were being fired at the festival lot at the same time as, or within 40 seconds after the time Jesus Campos first reported that shots were fired over the radio, the statement said. Metro officers were together with armed Mandalay Bay security officers in the building when Campos first reported that shots were fired over the radio. These Metro officers and armed Mandalay Bay security officers immediately responded to the 32nd floor. So they put in the word armed. So apparently some of their security officers, I guess, were armed. But I think Jesus Campos, for some reason or another, was not. Maybe that was the licensing thing.
Yeah. One thing, I mean, you've got to remember that as far as MGM is concerned, they're very much in protect themselves mode because the sharks are circling,
Yes.
the lawyers are,
Yes.
are beginning to
Yes.
gather information and prepare their court cases against
Yeah.
MGM
Yes.
for various victims'
Yes.
challenges. So,
Right. Yes, that's certainly true.
so you can't necessarily take anything that's being said now as being gospel as opposed to just, protection.
Yeah. I think,
I don't think that's a conspiracy theory at all. I think that's just a
yeah,
fact.
that's just the fact of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So in the most recent time, so anyway, nearly 2 weeks into the investigation, authorities have yet to disclose a motive for Paddock's attack, which left 58 dead. Yeah. So very strange thing happened.
Yeah, I mean, the FBI are doggedly just maintaining that there is no connection between Paddock and the ISIS,
Right.
instead of actually trying to... it would seem that, from what I've been reading online, that they're not actually even really checking it out, not following through on their investigation on that area,
Oh, well,
according to some people in online community.
we know that ISIS has claimed several times, actually, that he was one of their people. And people have pointed out that ISIS does not do that unless they were at least, unless they're connected somehow,
Right.
indirectly, even indirectly. But they say that he converted 6 months ago. But my feeling is, though, that the preparation for this attack may have started more than 6 months ago. So I'm just wondering whether the ISIS connection might have been created by Paddock. Maybe we know that, I guess we know that he checked out, reconnoitered places in Boston and Chicago as possible targets. We don't know why he did not go ahead with those targets and finally chose Las Vegas. There's no explanation of that. But I think that doing a killing spree like that, especially if someone has never killed a person before, takes some time, some energy to overcome some kind of conscience, I would imagine. I don't know. I've also never killed a person, so I don't know. But I think doing that kind of thing, there's some kind of energy that has to build up in you or something like that before you can actually go through with it. And I'm wondering if maybe he created this connection with ISIS as a way of sort of finding a philosophical foundation or philosophical reason to go through with something that he had been planning already, out of anger for, I still stick with my. I've already given my conspiracy theory on this whole thing.
Okay.
Yes, my conspiracy theory is that this was an anti-Trumper who was shooting at people that he believed were Trump supporters.
Well, that would make a lot of sense. The country music, the country people.
See, my theory makes a lot of sense. So how come the FBI is not interviewing me?
Right. Well, one thing that always gets left out of these conversations in the primary media is the psychological state of the person, and the psychiatric drugs
Yes.
that are given.
Yes, and he was taking drugs.
He was.
Yes.
So I think it's been a proven thing that
Yes.
every single mass shooter since Columbine was on psychiatric
Yes,
drugs.
yes. Yes, that's right. And the media always goes to the guns, but they leave out the psychiatric drugs because drug companies pay a lot of advertising dollars to media companies.
Oh, billions.
Yes.
Yes, it's a billion-dollar industry, and anybody that tries to expose that is usually dealt with very rapidly. I remember very clearly years ago, Tom Cruise was doing a short speaking tour, not about any movie or anything, but actually explaining and expressing the connection between psychiatric treatment, psychiatric drugs, and antisocial behavior.
Right. And, some of those drugs say that the possible side effects, or suicidal thoughts or antisocial behavior.
But as soon as he started doing that, the drug companies couldn't counter what he was claiming and the facts that he was putting forth. So within less than a week, an amazing campaign started. First with one junk newspaper, and then immediately spread to the major media outlets to totally discredit Tom Cruise and make him into a complete babbling idiot. Appeared to be so, in the eyes of the American public, so as to discredit anything that he actually said.
Right.
And it just showed me the power of the drug companies.
Yes, and the power of these PR experts, yes.
Yeah.
They can spin something any way they want, any way their clients want,
Yeah.
any way that their clients pay them to do, yes. And so, a lot of that I think will be taken care of under the Chunuk Constitution. It's really sad how this is another tragedy when the law enforcement authorities really bumble around like this. Such a traumatic situation. The victims are suffering a second time. They're told one thing, and the next they're told another thing. But and also, but let's not forget though the ongoing mass murder that's going on in Chicago. More than 500 people have been killed this year in Chicago so far, and 64,000 people died of overdoses last year in the United States. And as I said, that would be the same or about the same as having 3 Las Vegas massacres every day, 7 days a week, 365 days. That kind of, so those things are not being talked about.
And of course, Chicago is one of the most strongest gun ban
That's right.
areas.
No one's talking about gun control in Chicago to prevent the massacres there because they already have gun control.
Right.
It's a
And it
crazy
doesn't
world.
work.
It's a crazy world. It doesn't work. That's right.
Right.
All right, let's take a break and come back in a minute or so with more news from a Chunuk perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms. Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group, with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, October 14th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Tenuguk Hyungjin Moon, and I'm with Robert Carvell here. We'll look at some good news. Consumer sentiment in the U.S. unexpectedly surges to 13-year high. That's before. That's higher than anything that we had during the Obama administration's 8 years, because that was 8 years. U.S. consumer sentiment unexpectedly surged to a 13-year high as Americans' perception of the economy and their own finances rebounded following several major hurricanes, a University of Michigan survey showed Friday. The jump in sentiment, which was greater than any analyst had projected, may reflect several trends: falling gasoline prices following hurricane-related spike, repeated record highs for the stock market, a 16-year-old low in unemployment, and post-storm recovery efforts driving a rebound in economic growth. The advance in the main gauge spanned age and income subgroups as well as partisan views. According to the report, almost 6 out of every 10 consumers thought the economy had recently improved. In early October, the university said. Not all measures in the survey showed big gains. The share of consumers reporting improved finances held steady at about half, while the proportion of expecting gains in their financial situation fell slightly to 40%. While the early October surge indicates, quote, while the early October surge indicates greater optimism about the future course of the economy, it also reflects an unmistakable sense among consumers that economic prospects are now about as good as could be expected, unquote, Richard Curtin, director of the University of Michigan Consumer Survey, said in a statement. Indeed, nothing in the latest survey indicates that consumers anticipate an economic downturn anytime soon, which contrarians may consider a clear warning sign of trouble ahead. So if everybody's feeling great, that means something's wrong with this picture. Which is actually true. There is probably trouble ahead, and people need to put away their champagne. 83% of respondents saw buying conditions for household durables as favorable, most in more than a decade. Positive vehicles buying attitudes at 75%, highest since 2004. Consumers saw inflation rate in the next year at 2.3% after 2.7% the prior month. Inflation rate over the next 5 to 10 years is seen at 2.4% after 2.5% in September. So people are, but you know, a lot of economic experts, Jim Rogers, David Stockman, other investing experts are predicting very sharp declines in the stock market or in the financial markets soon.
They've been saying it for a long time, but it's just going up and up and up and up.
But it happens, you know.
Yeah.
It happens at some point or another.
Yeah, I guess what goes up must come down.
Yes, but the stock market at some point becomes kind of a situation where you buy something in anticipation that you can buy another one person who is even more foolish than you are, who will buy it from you at a higher price. Mm. But then it comes to a point there where that last guy will get stuck with it. that last guy gets stuck with it. And it's usually the retail investor who gets stuck with it. The people who actually decide what the price of a stock will be, the big, the institutional investors suddenly pull out, and the retail investors are stuck. All right, now back to some bad news. Antibiotic resistance could spell the end of modern medicine, says chief medic. End of modern medicine. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah. Well, modern medicine really doesn't give any credence or thought to the fact that we are spiritual beings and that there is a cause to our physical life. It only deals with the physical body without anything else involved at all. So they're just really dealing with the effects rather than the
symptoms.
cause. The symptoms
Yes.
as opposed to the actual causes. Though, of course, I mean, there are things like germs and microbes and whatever else that cause these things, and you break your leg, whatever. But usually, once you get into dealing with the more internal aspect or allowing the body to actually do its thing, you actually create much better
Yes.
healing processes.
Yes, there's actually no profit in a cure. For example, if you go into a doctor and the doctor says, "Oh, you have high cholesterol. Here's a drug that I want you to take from now until the time of your death, for the rest of your life."
Well, I'm diabetic, and that's my situation right now. I keep asking, isn't there a way to actually cure this? No.
There's no profit in a cure.
No, absolutely not.
That's right.
That's the problem. And again, we come right back around circle to the drug companies.
Yes, they're making a huge amount of money. Yes.
Yes.
Professor Dame Sally Davies, this is from The Guardian, so we're in a British paper here. Professor Dame Sally Davies says action is needed around the world to tackle hidden problem that is already claiming lives. England's chief medical officer has repeated her warning of a post-antibiotic apocalypse as she urged world leaders to address the growing threat of antibiotic resistance. When I was in college, we used to sit around thinking of all the ways that mankind could destroy themselves. And it was my conclusion after that humanity will never make it into the 21st century. Somehow we did, and somehow we're 17 years into the 21st century, but there are still millions of ways that mankind can destroy ourselves. I mean, yesterday we were talking about, we were reporting on how if North Korea detonates a nuclear bomb above the United States, above the atmosphere, then this will knock out the power grid in America, and 90% of all Americans will die within a year.
Yes.
This was a report that was submitted to Congress on Thursday. All right, and then of course we have now this lady saying that post-antibiotic apocalypse. So I don't know. Professor Dame Sally Davies said that if antibiotics lose their effectiveness, it would spell the end of modern medicine. Without the drugs used to fight infections, common medical interventions such as cesarean sections, cancer treatments, and hip replacements would become incredibly risky, and transplant medicine would be a thing of the past, she said. We really are facing, if we don't take action now, a dreadful post-antibiotic apocalypse. I don't want to say to my children that I didn't do my best to protect them and their children, Davies said. Health experts have previously said resistance to antimicrobial drugs could cause a bigger threat to mankind than cancer. In recent years, the UK has led a drive to raise global awareness of the threat posed to modern medicine by antimicrobial resistance. Meanwhile, here in the United States, we are still looking for a connection between Russia and Trump. That's our priority. We don't care about this post-antibiotic apocalypse. We don't know how the Russians were in bed with Trump. It's ridiculous. Each year, about 700,000 people around the world die due to drug-resistant infections, including tuberculosis, HIV, and malaria. If no action is taken, And by the way, in California, it's no longer is now it's only a misdemeanor now for a person who's infected with HIV to donate blood.
Huh?
Yes. Oh, you didn't know that?
So they can happily go around donating blood and killing
Yes.
people.
Yes. It's only a misdemeanor. You get. I don't know what the fine
for
is, but
California, that's kind of standard procedure, though. I mean, that's how the political system works in
Yes.
California.
But if California blood stays in California, then I guess the rest of us wouldn't have to worry about it so much. But I don't think that's the case. I think California blood may come to Pennsylvania. I don't see why not.
And that's kind of scary.
Yeah, that is quite scary. It's only a misdemeanor now for an HIV infected person to donate blood in California. Governor Jerry Brown signed that law a couple days ago. If no action is taken, it has been estimated that drug-resistant infections will kill 10 million people a year by 2050. The UK government and the Wellcome Trust, so that's another way mankind will kill ourselves, by California blood. The UK government and the Wellcome Trust, along with others, have organized a call to action meeting for health officials from around the world. At the meeting in Berlin, the government will announce a new project that will map the spread of death and disease caused by drug-resistant superbugs. Davies said the AMR is with us now, killing people. AMR, I guess, means antimicrobial resistance. Yes.
Well, in some ways, we should learn from that in the sense that these quote-unquote superbugs are actually doing what we should be doing,
What
which
is
is
that?
that they are improving themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and every time there's a challenge
Mm-hmm.
and something attacking them, they grow and develop a means of protecting themselves
Yes.
against it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are living organisms just as we are. And so it used to be in the past that we get a cold or we get a flu and we would develop resistance to it. And so
Immunity.
we would keep healthy.
Develop immunity, yes.
Yeah, and develop immunity. So these superbugs are really doing what we should be doing, which is developing immunity to these bugs ourselves instead of taking pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
So we should learn from this.
Learn from it. All
What
right.
is the enemy doing? It's like you always, in any battle, you have to learn what is the enemy doing and how can I do better than them? So if the superbugs are learning immunity to what is attacking them, shouldn't we be doing the same?
Well, I'm sure there are, again, pharmaceutical companies that are working on developing some kind of something that will kill superbugs.
Yeah, but then it's just going to keep
Yes, of course. Yeah. So,
going. It's never going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
this is a serious issue that is with us now, causing deaths. If it was anything else, people would be up in arms about it, but because it is hidden, they just let it pass. It does not really have a face because most people who die of drug-resistant infections, their families just think they died of an uncontrolled infection. It will only get worse unless we take strong action everywhere across the globe. We need some real work on the ground to make a difference, or we risk the end of modern medicine. She added, not to be able to effectively treat infections means that cesarean sections, hip replacements, modern surgery is risky. Modern cancer treatment is risky, and transplant medicine becomes a thing of the past. Davies said that if the global community did not act, then the progress that had been made in Britain may be undermined. She estimated that about 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 prescriptions in UK primary care were probably not needed, but other countries use vastly more antibiotics in the community, and they need to start doing as we are, which is reducing usage, she said. Our latest data shows that we have reduced human consumption by 4.3% in 2014-15 from the year before. I know that doctors, what happens often is that a patient will go into a doctor's office, and they say, I have symptoms. I have a headache, I have a runny nose, I have itchy eyes, and I'm coughing, I'm sneezing. And the doctor will want to say, well, just go home, go to bed, drink plenty of fluids, and it'll go away. But the patient won't be satisfied with that. He says, "No, I want an antibiotic."
I remember one time when I was very young, not very young, I was like 19, and I was so sick. And my mother called the doctor. It was a stomach thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor got back to her and said, "Nice cup of tea will do the job.
See that?
The tannic acid in the tea, that'll really calm his stomach. Just don't eat anything, go to bed, take it easy. Nice cup of tea."
Whereas now, if that same young boy had been declared in California because of this hepatitis A outbreak, Governor Jerry Brown declared a state of emergency over the deadly hepatitis A outbreak in California. The emergency proclamation, which was issued by Brown on Friday, allows the state to increase its supply of hepatitis A vaccines in order to control the current outbreak. Immunization from the federal vaccine program has been distributed to at-risk populations in affected areas, but additional supplies are needed, according to a statement released by Brown's office. The emergency proclamation gives the California Department of Public Health authority to immediately purchase vaccines directly from manufacturers and distribute them to impacted communities. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health declared a local outbreak of hepatitis A in September. San Diego and Santa Cruz have also declared local outbreaks. According to the CDPH, there have been a total of 18 deaths so far, all in the San Diego area, which has reported 490 cases of hepatitis A and 342 hospitalizations. The CDPH said the Santa Cruz area has 71 reported cases and 33 hospitalizations. Los Angeles has 8 reported cases and 6 hospitalizations. And other regions in California have 7 reported cases and 5 hospitalizations. This brings the total number of cases in the state to 576, with 386 hospitalizations. California is experiencing the largest hepatitis A outbreak in the United States, transmitted from person to person instead of by contaminated food, since the vaccine became available in 1996. According to the CDPH, the hepatitis A virus is spread when virus is ingested by mouth from contact with hands, objects, food, or drinks that are contaminated by the feces of an infected person. Hepatitis A infection typically causes fever, general ill feeling, yellowness of the skin, lack of appetite, and nausea. Severe hepatitis A infection is rare, but is more common in people with underlying liver disease and can cause the liver to fail, which can lead to death. So, it's spread when a virus is ingested by mouth from contact with hands, objects, food, or drinks that are contaminated by the feces of an infected person. How's that happening? Now, all these areas are I know where San Diego is, Santa Cruz, Los Angeles. These are all in Southern California, aren't they? So, where is this coming from? Let me give you it. South Korea is the only country in the world, the only country in the Northern Hemisphere where the incidence of malaria is higher in the northern part of the country than in the southern part of the country.
Oh.
And in California, we see hepatitis A outbreak in the southern part of the country. Let's go on. Let's go on.
I'm missing that.
You're missing that? All right. I'm sure somebody gets it.
Okay.
Okay. NFL won't make players stand. I don't think they should be forced to stand, but they should stand. But I think it's right that they're not forced to stand. I mean, if they're going to start fining people for not standing. I mean, I could see coaches not playing players. That would be a coach's decision. Hey, you didn't stand for the national anthem, so I'm not going to. You're not going to play today. Something like that. I could see that. But the NFL, but I think some people are learning that the NFL is actually a 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Oh, is it?
Yes. The individual teams are not.
Oh.
The individual teams are for-profit companies.
Yeah, I was going to say. They
But the
make so much
league,
money.
is a 501c3. In other words, it doesn't pay taxes on its income.
Does it make income?
Yes, television revenue.
Ah,
Yes,
okay.
yes. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but actually you can go, and I looked at their, as a 501c3, they make a Form 990 report to the IRS every year, and that gives their sort of expenses and everything like that. In fact, during the next break, I could actually pull it up because the most recent one will be online. In fact, why don't we take a break now, and I'll do that. Let's take a break now, and I'll pull up the NFL's statement online.
Okay.
All right, Rio, we're taking a break now.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, on their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, October 14th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chenaguk, Hyungjin Moon, and I'm here with Mr. Robert Carvell. So I have to make a correction. It turns out that the NFL National Football League was a nonprofit corporation for 73 years, but they changed that a couple of years ago. So I want to make that correction. They were granted nonprofit status by the IRS in 1942, and they were a nonprofit corporation for many years, for 73 years. But then in 2015, they dropped that. Basically, I guess they were getting too much flack over this whole thing. The NFL operated as an unincorporated nonprofit 501c6 since 1942, with the league office not subject to tax because it does not make a profit. Instead, income was distributed to each of the league's 32 teams, who were taxed on it themselves. The NFL considered itself a trade association made up of and financed by its 32 member teams due to this structure. But ending the tax-exempt status, this is an article written at that time, will likely have very little monetary effect on the league itself, especially because NFL is sure to make some structural changes to limit the tax liability of the league office and in reaction to the change. What the NFL does do, though, is it receives a lot of subsidies from the NFL. See, they go into a community to say, look, if you have an NFL team in this city, it's going to create a lot of jobs, and it's going to create retailers around are going to make a lot of money, and so forth. It's going to stimulate the economy. So therefore, you should give us tax breaks, and you should give us subsidies. This is their argument, and so based on that claim, they get a lot of subsidies and help, and that is being looked at now by people as this. We have this situation where players are refusing to stand for the national anthem. One report on Watchdog.org said that over the past 2 decades, the NFL has raked in about $7 billion in taxpayer money to spend on stadium renovation and buildings. Another study from the Brookings Institution showed that federal taxpayers have subsidized the construction of 36 stadiums at a cost of over $3.2 billion since 2000. Michael Sargent, an infrastructure expert at the Heritage Foundation, wrote about how sports teams are specifically use specifically crafted tax breaks to get the public to finance their massive projects. Tax-exempt municipal bonds are typically reserved for public use projects such as bridges, water systems, and other infrastructure, Sargent wrote for the Daily Signal. Yet because of a loophole in the tax code, private use stadiums can take advantage of this tax break and have done so prolifically. In fact, only a handful of NFL and other major league teams use privately financed venues to host their games. It would seem after sinking enormous investment into sports franchises, cities would reap serious financial benefits in return. But this isn't the case at all. Research from George Mason University has shown that not only do communities gain almost no economic benefits from subsidized sports teams, but some findings indicate harmful effects of sports on per capita income, wage, salary, and disbursement, and wages per job. Recently released polls show national anthem protests are deeply unpopular with the American people, but polls also show that the taxpayer funding of sports is also widely disliked. When likely voters in Nevada were asked if they favored or opposing using $500 million in taxpayer to fund a stadium for the Oakland Raiders to move to Las Vegas, they overwhelmingly said no. According to KTNV TV 13 Action News, Rasmussen reports poll 60% of Nevada voters opposed the funding and only 28% supported it. Given the mass discount over national anthem kneeling and massive discontent over national anthem kneeling and rampant politicization of the once unifying sport of football, perhaps now Americans will turn a more skeptical eye toward how their sport teams rely on public money and actually do something about it. There are some in Congress who have taken notice. In America, if you want to play sports, you're free to do so. If you want to protest, you're free to do so, Representative Matt Gaetz, a Republican of Florida, said on Tuesday. But you should do so in your own time and on your own dime. Recent bipartisan legislation on Capitol Hill aimed to strip federal funding from sports teams. A bill sponsored by Senators James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, and Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, would prevent teams from using municipal bonds that are exempt from federal taxes. Representative Steve Russell, Republican of Oklahoma, introduced a similar bill in the House. Lankford said in a statement, in June, the federal government is responsible for a lot of important functions, but financing sports stadiums for multi-millions, sometimes billion-dollar franchises is definitely not one of them. Using billions of federal taxpayer dollars for the subsidization of private stadiums when we have real infrastructure needs in our country is not a good way to prioritize a limited amount of funds. Yeah.
Very good.
Instead of building stadiums, let's build bridges.
Absolutely. And that was one of Trump's promises, was to rebuild the infrastructure of America.
So if we see improved infrastructure, we'll have a Kevin Kaepernick to thank for it.
Yeah.
Was that his name, Kevin? Was that his name?
I don't
Kaepernick, anyway.
Yeah.
The guy who started this whole thing.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, Gaetz became the lead sponsor of legislation that would end the tax-exempt status of professional sports leagues. NFL and other sports teams have deep financial interest in getting taxpayers to pay their bills, so it will take a widespread concerted effort on the part of the public to end this gravy train. Since NFL billionaire owners have gone out of their way to accommodate millionaire players in standing down for the national anthem, perhaps tax-paying Americans should start withholding money from the privileged and let them all stand on their own 2 feet. There you go.
There you go. And in fact, that's the freedom way of doing things.
It is.
Not enacting suppressive rules. You know, you have to stand, or
Right.
but let the free market take its toll.
Yes.
You know, if all of a sudden NFL attendance drops, or they lose their gravy
ratings,
train.
their ratings are going down. They're sinking like crazy.
Yeah. So this is the natural thing. This is the natural way to allow things to happen. You know, I just as a little off side comment.
All right.
I sometimes wonder if the fact that Trump is he keeps prodding this particular situation with the football players not standing and tweeting about it and kind of like trying to keep this thing going, whether he's actually using it as a smokescreen to get other things done effectively under the radar. Keep the media, you know, he plays the media, right? He drops these little bombshells and
Yes,
the
he
media
does.
immediately go, "Wah, wah, 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 wah." And meanwhile he's off doing something good underneath the radar, just quietly getting stuff accomplished. So.
Well, he's doing something, or maybe not that he's doing something, but that he's not doing something. That the consumer sentiment highest in 13 years.
Yes.
The stock market is up, record levels, and things are going great for the economy. And I think the best thing he's doing probably is just staying out of the way.
Yeah.
But also he's, letting the free market have more influence over Obamacare.
Sure.
But I think but it used to be that the football united the country.
Yes.
Now more and more the country is being united by Trump attacking football, attacking the NFL.
Because patriotism is something which goes beyond politics.
Yes. Kind of. You know,
Kind
I
of.
don't think the Antifa people are so patriotic.
No. Well, they're not really political. They're paid bullies.
Yes. Well, you know, and they're, yeah, but there are some people that just philosophically want to destroy the country.
Yes.
Yes.
Like Soros, for
that-
example.
Yeah, Soros is a good example, yes, and he's certainly paying people, but also the people that, even the people who are being paid, they also, I think, there were a bunch of them who would very much like to see chaos coming to America and destroying the country.
Sad but true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the NFL. So that was the headline that got us started on this. Let's go ahead and look at that actual article. NFL not seeking a mandate for players to stand during anthem. The NFL said on Friday it has no plans to mandate players to stand for the U.S. national anthem, but will rather present a possible solution on how to end the controversial protests when it meets with the team owners next week. Commissioner Roger Goodell, along with the head of the NFL Players Association, will meet with the owners from October 17 to 18 in New York, where the issue of player protests during the U.S. national anthem is expected to command much attention. Goodell has a plan that he is going to present to owners about how to use our platform to both raise awareness and make progress on issues of social justice and equality in this country. Is that the job of the NFL?
No.
I thought they were NFL players were supposed to pass, punt, tackle, block, run routes, do this and kick. But no, they want to raise awareness and make progress on on issues of social justice and equality in this country. Are they playing football during this time? I don't know. Well,
As the game of football is one of the major pastimes of America,
yes.
and it is there to be.
And I should point out that you are an American by choice.
I am an American by choice.
Yes. Okay.
And as such, their job and what they're getting paid those millions of dollars for is to entertain the American people.
Yes.
By going out and playing a good game of football.
That's right.
And doing the best they can in
That's right. Yes.
in the most professional way to actually entertain and to create a sense of, are they going to win? Are they not going to win? Is he going to do it? And getting all
Yes.
this excitement going and
Yes.
getting the people de-stressed from their everyday lives.
Yes.
Social change is not unimportant, but is not part of the game.
That's right.
Yeah. Social change is, of course, very important. And the direction it takes, again, is also incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
So one has to ask, the social change that they are they trying to make is something that we need to deal with in the free marketplace again.
I can see something happening to the NFL that's already happened to the Miss America contest, where they may say, yeah, okay, you're a good passer, and we like you a lot, but what do you think about President Trump's program policy on Obamacare? That your answer to that question will decide whether or not we draft you.
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see that happening down the line. If you don't agree with us, we'll go with this other guy who's not quite a good passer, but he's done a lot for social change and justice.
Or their vision of social change and justice.
Yes. What we don't have is a proposal that changes our policy. We don't have something that mandates anything. That's clear. If that was the case, I doubt the head of the NFLPA would have put a joint statement out with us. The statement released on Wednesday said Goodell invited NFLPA Executive Director DeMaurice Smith to the meetings and that the agenda will be a continuation of how to make progress on the important social issues that players have vocalized. Do like everybody else, go out in front of the stadium and hold a sign.
Yeah.
But kneeling for the national anthem is certainly not a good way to do this, and it's very divisive. It's divisive. Isn't that something that divisiveness is something that the liberals are supposed to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take a break and we'll come back with more news from a Chonryuk perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today. Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, October 14th, 2017. And I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second King of Chonryuk, Hyungjin Moon. I'm here with Mr. Robert Carvell. And just sort of picking up a story here off of Breitbart News. Bill Bennett touts that Trump has more conservative cabinet than Reagan. Dr. Bill Bennett, Secretary of Education under President Ronald Reagan, told attendees at the Value Voters Summit Friday that President Donald Trump's cabinet is more conservative cabinet than Reagan's cabinet was. Bennett, now a radio host and author, specifically named current Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, my friend, who is fighting to empower parents, as an example of conservatism and defended her signature policy of school choice. However, both Bennett and DeVos have come under fire from many conservative parents throughout America for their support, mentioned or otherwise, for the Common Core standards. The movement to eradicate the federally funded and supported Common Core has been led by one of the most significant populist grassroots efforts in decades. As Breitbart News reported in 2014, Bennett drew the ire of anti-Common Core parents throughout the country after penning an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that made a conservative case for Common Core. In his column, Bennett reiterated all the talking points of the pro-Common Core education establishment. His remarks, especially from one who served in Reagan's cabinet under a president who had desired to eliminate the U.S. Education Department, led to an uproar. Ultimately, Bennett admitted that public relations, lobbying, and business consulting firm DCI Group had paid him to write the column. Though those states have had to sign on to the Common Core standards, the federal government incentivized them to do so with a competitive grant known as Race to the Top, which was funded by former President Barack Obama's 2009 stimulus bill. More federal force was employed with the promise to states of waivers from the onerous No Child Left Behind law if they adopted the common standards. In his column, Bennett even appeared to be condoning Common Core rebrands, which many state legislatures have adopted in an effort to simply avoid use of the now toxic title of Common Core. Call it Common Core or call it something else, as Arizona has done by renaming its standards Arizona's College and Career Ready Standards. But public schools should have high standards based on a core curriculum that is aligned with tests that are comparable across state lines. DeVos has also been widely criticized by the conservative base of the Republican Party for her own open support for Common Core champion Jeb Bush, who announced he was excited once Trump nominated her for her current post. DeVos ultimately became an at-large delegate at the Republican National Convention last year for Ohio Governor John Kasich, another supporter of Common Core. Though once nominated by Trump, DeVos announced that she was certainly not a supporter of Common Core. She made contributions of both her time and personal wealth to support pro-Common Core organizations that fought repeal of the controversial standards, including the Great Lakes Education Project in her home state of Michigan and Bush's Foundation for Excellence in Education. DeVos has since angered conservative parents further by her statements that because of the massive federal education law known as the Every Student Succeeds Act, there isn't any Common Core anymore in these country's schools. Most states, however, have continued to use the controversial standards, including those that have changed the name or rebranded them. Jane Robbins, a senior fellow at American Principles Project, writes at Truth in American Education that Jeb Bush has given DeVos every reason to be proud. DeVos populated USED, that's the Education Department, with bureaucrats from the Bush wing of education policy, including Democrat and Black Lives Matter supporter Jason Bodel, since departed after angering DeVos's Michigan friends over that state's ESSA plan. Conservative activists were disappointed and mystified by those choices, especially since there is no shortage of solid, highly qualified Common Core opponents who are available. While DeVos has come out strong in her decision to scrap the Obama-era Title IX campus sex policies that forced colleges to conduct kangaroo courts in dealing with accusations of sexual assault, Robbins says she remains lacking on issues concerning elementary and secondary education because of her choices of department personnel. Too many of the people selected for K-12 policies can be expected to continue the trajectory launched by progressive educators a century ago and reaching new heights under the Obama and his secretaries, she asserts. The Chonigu Constitution, of course, does not allow the federal government to have an education department.
Good idea.
Does not allow the federal government to be involved in education. And the reason is that, involvement in education really is an important indicator of sovereignty, the ability to teach your children and to pass on your values to your children. I think that's something that every parent wants to do. And it's something that the modern education system wants to avoid, wants to prevent, wants to block.
Right.
They do not want children to learn values from their parents because they consider those values to be outdated, outmoded, to be even racist, and everything else bad. The idea that is still, every Student Succeeds Act, you're going to pass a law that says that every student's going to succeed, right? Some students are not going to succeed.
Right.
That's the word. That's how the world works. Every student is not going to succeed.
Right. Equality of opportunity.
Yes.
But not necessarily equality of end result.
Exactly.
Yeah, everybody should have the equal opportunity to do and to strive and to make everything work for themselves.
But even there can be inequality.
Yeah.
Because a child of a rich parent has more opportunity than a child of a poor parent.
Well, that's true.
But that's but I think though that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, child of a poor parent can still work hard and become successful.
Yes.
And rich.
Right.
And
Ben Carson is a very good example of that, right?
Ben Carson, tell us about that.
Didn't he grew up in a single family,
Yes.
single parent family, in pretty much poverty, but he educated himself and became one of America's top doctors.
Yes, that's right. And now he's a member of the cabinet,
Right.
President Trump's cabinet. Yes, that is a good example. And of course, one of the things that people talk about the inability to escape from the ghetto, but of course, a lot of that is due to the fact that the Democratic Party has designed it so that people will not escape, so that they can continue to use those votes for their political advantage. And the ghettos have actually been described as Democratic plantations, and that the Democrats are plantation owners. So there's a lot going on. But certainly, parents, fundamentally, the parents need to be able to pass on their values to their children. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to happen under the current, or it's extremely difficult for that to happen under the current education system, where parents are fighting the schools, actually. Parents are fighting the schools. For example, if the kids go to public school, they learn evolution. They learn, different things about homosexuality and about transgender, and about they're told that, you can choose your own gender. If you don't want to be a girl, fine. You can say that you're a boy, and you can force people to use a masculine pronoun when referring to you. That's okay, And they even sort of create an atmosphere where it's cool to be gay. And so some kids I know, especially white kids, being white is bad, but if you're gay, it's less bad. I mean, a straight white is worse than if you're at least a gay white. That's at least you have some redeeming value there, because you're a victim.
Which is total opposite, right? Of the reality.
And being a victim is a good thing. It gives you sort of hero status.
Yeah.
People will say, "Oh, you're a hero," if you if you claim that you're a victim. So this is the kind of thing that parents have to fight today. And if they're trying to pass on Christian values, the school is going to do everything they can to prevent you from doing that.
Right. It's part of the war on Christianity in America,
Mm-hmm.
which has been ongoing now for a number of years. And the value system of Christianity has been knocked and thrown out and so on.
And President Trump says that he's going to fight for Judeo-Christian values. Getting rid of the education department would be a good thing.
Good start.
Good way to do that.
Yes.
I think that would really promote Christian values in America if we could just abolish the education department, which, by the way, didn't exist until the 1970s. I think it was President Ford that brought that in the 1970s.
Well, it really should be a local thing.
Yes.
Not even necessarily statewide.
Yes.
The local school boards should be made up of the parents and educators governing the direction that they want their school to go in.
And the Chonic Constitution, of course, goes even further by doing away with public education altogether.
Have homeschooling, right?
Homeschooling, but you can have homeschooling or you can have private schools. But what it does, though, is it gives you competition.
Right.
And, of course, whenever the government gets involved in something, then it kills competition.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with government being involved in these things. So again, government can get along on less than 10% of GDP, total revenue, just less than 10% of GDP, if these, education and other functions are transferred completely to the private sector. Of course, there are private schools today, but basically, when you send your kids to private schools, you're paying tuition twice.
You're paying the tax.
Right,
and
you're paying the tax from which public schools get their money, and you're paying your private school tuition,
Right.
or your So.
But now, isn't DeVos championing the money follows the child?
Yeah, so she is championing, yes, that kind of a thing, that kind of a voucher program, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. But this thing about Common Core, though, apparently although she says she certainly is not a supporter of it, but her track record says otherwise. Mm-hmm. And this author, the author of that article that we just read, makes a good case that she's actually a strong supporter of it, and that she's not getting rid of it, that it's only being rebranded. And this, what is this law? Every Student Succeeds Act. I mean, the name of the law itself is ridiculous.
Right.
Not every student succeeds. Not every child succeeds. Some children will be left behind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, but that's. But then.
Well, left
things
behind
will
from
work.
what? I mean, education system shouldn't mandate that you have to go through this amount and this amount, and then you've got to go to college afterwards and become indebted for the rest of your life with thousands of dollars of student loans.
Thousands, or tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
And, because there are people that have the leaning to be able to do the mechanical trades
Yes.
and to be the mechanics. Why should they have to go to university?
Yes.
Fixing cars, people love doing that. Some people actually really enjoy doing that.
Yes. And hey, the world needs ditch diggers too.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Not so. And the idea of success, when you say every student succeeds, what is your standard of success?
Yes.
All right. Is your standard of success that you go to an Ivy League college and get a job in a big financial company, which then ruins the entire world economic system? Is that your standard of success? I think a standard of success differs for each person, but primarily though, from a Chonigu perspective, or from a religious, spiritual perspective, the standard of success is your relationship with Christ. That's where your success has to be, to form
And
a
that's why
personal
the
relationship
education
with Christ, and that's definitely not coming through the public education system.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yes, because it's your personal relationship with Christ that's going to get you to a good place in the spirit world.
Which is for eternity,
Yes.
not just for a few years.
Yes, not just for a few years.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's take a break right about now, and we'll come back with more news after this.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
And welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, October 14th, 2017. Tim Elder sitting in for the second King of General Young Jin Moon. I'm here with Mr. Robert Carvel. Before we finish, we need to go through the Iran nuclear deal situation. Need to see what's going on there. In Wall Street Journal this morning, I think, this is this morning's edition, President says he won't certify that rogue regime in Tehran complying with nuclear agreement. So this is President Donald Trump took aim Friday at the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement, vowing to end the U.S. participation in the landmark deal unless Congress and U.S. allies are able to deliver on punitive measures targeting Tehran's missile program. its support for regional militant groups, and any future nuclear activities. As a first step, Mr. Trump refused to certify to Congress under a U.S. law that Iran was complying with its obligations under the nuclear agreement, charging that the country had violated the terms of the deal. Going further, Mr. Trump said if efforts to address his concerns fall short, he would terminate the accord. It is under continuous review, and our participation can be canceled by me as president at any time, he said. As U.S. President, Mr. Trump has wide, long-term latitude over the fate of the agreement, but lacks the ability under the accord's complicated terms to immediately abolish it. Mr. Trump, reiterating his fierce opposition to the terms of the deal, announced his decision after issuing a lengthy denunciation of what he called a rogue regime run by radicals. Iran is under a control of the fanatical regime, Mr. Trump said in a speech at the White House, adding it has spread death, destruction, and chaos all around the globe. The important thing to understand about this deal is that it's not a treaty, because former President Obama, I love saying that, former President Obama did not submit it to Congress to be ratified as a treaty.
Oh.
Yes, so he did it by executive action.
So it can be undone by executive action.
So
Or inaction, as the case may be.
action or inaction. So, but then, yeah. So, Sarah didn't explain. So that's why it's called the Iran nuclear deal, and not the nuclear agreement or treaty or anything like that. In July 2015, the permanent 5 members of the U.S. Security Council, Britain, China, France, Russia, and the United States, plus Germany, so that's why it's called a P+1, a P5+1, agreed with Iran on a landmark deal to prevent Tehran from building a nuclear bomb. In exchange, certain international sanctions that had been in place for Iran for years would be lifted. The sanctions relief led to Iran reviving billions of dollars in unfrozen funds. So they received those funds and opening its markets back up to many foreign investors. So the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, as it's known by its formal name, or JCPOA, took years to negotiate. It was endorsed by a United Nations Security Council resolution, solidifying it as international law. It went into effect in January 2016. The Iran nuclear agreement was reached during U.S. President Barack Obama's term, and after it was approved, congressional Republicans tried to derail it, but under U.S. legislation adopted in the lead-up to the finalization of the agreement, Congress gave itself review and oversight privileges for any nuclear deal reached with Tehran. Under the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act of 2015, the U.S. President must certify to Congress every 90 days, that Tehran is abiding by the provisions of the deal.
So every 3 months.
Yes, every 3 months he has to do this. Trump has to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Four criteria must be met. Iran is transparently, verifiably, fully implementing all parts of the deal. Iran has not committed a material breach of the agreement. Iran has not taken any action, including covert activities, that could significantly advance its nuclear weapons program. Suspension of Iran-related sanctions are appropriate and proportionate to measures taken by Iran to terminate its nuclear program and are vital to U.S. national security interests. So those are the 4 things that the president has to agree to certify for him to certify Iran as still being a good guy. Mm-hmm. If the president does not certify Iran's compliance this month, it would trigger a 60-day period in which Congress can introduce legislation to reimpose some or all of the U.S. imposed sanctions, but not the UN ones. If that happens, it could cause problems with countries that have resumed trade and banking relationships with Iran by forcing Washington to impose secondary sanctions on them for cooperating with Tehran. Iran could also try to accuse the United States of having been the first to violate the deal and leads to its collapse. Congress could also decide not to reimpose sanctions and nothing would change. So Trump has certified the deal twice since taking office. The next deadline is October 15th, which is tomorrow. Trump has repeatedly indicated that he is not inclined to find Iran in compliance, most recently on Thursday. So basically, he's saying, so what Trump has done regarding that October 15th deadline, as a first step, Mr. Trump refused to certify to Congress. So this time, he had certified it twice already since taking office, but this time he said no. He refused to certify to Congress that this was the case. So now, according to this other article that we just read,
It throws it into the hands of the Congress now. They're responsible.
that's right. Congress has 60 days to impose sanctions. But they say that, but this article says that if Congress does not impose sanctions, then nothing changes. But then I guess apparently Trump thinks that he can abolish the deal. If the president chooses not to certify Iranian compliance, that does not mean the United States is withdrawing from the agreement. The U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, told the Washington Research Group last month. Some view that as a political strategy on the part of the president to show his supporters that he followed through on his promise to be tough on the Obama-era agreement, but without violating it. But that has risks. Decertifying and sending the deal to Congress puts its future in jeopardy. The agreement is not something someone can touch, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani warned last month in New York. This is a building that from the frame of which, if you take off a single brick, the entire building wall will collapse. If the deal falls apart, Iran could decide to resume producing and enriching uranium. Other parties to the deal say they will continue to uphold it. The UK will continue to do that, they said. The United States is the only party to the deal that has expressed an interest in renegotiating the agreement. So if President Trump decides to toss the Iran ball to Congress, which he has now, he could inject a high degree of uncertainty into the process. While it remains unclear what Congress's intention is now, any action that could be perceived as a U.S. violation of the deal could have the unpleasant consequence of isolating Washington internationally.
Well, Congress hasn't shown itself to be particularly forward-thinking this time around.
Right, especially under Mitch McConnell, yeah. But the president is saying that our participation can be canceled by me as president at any time, Trump said. I'm not sure what his basis for that is. Let's see if it explains here. Iran is under the control of a fanatical regime and so forth, so forth. In his threat, the president applied a well-practiced tactic of pressing for changes in pre-existing arrangements and abandoning them if he doesn't succeed. He has taken a similar approach to NAFTA and to the DACA, etc. Mr. Trump's move on Friday touches off high-pressure negotiations in Washington and European capitals over the future of the accord, and his action drew intensive worldwide attention. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani denounced Mr. Trump's comments in a televised speech, saying the Iranian people will not bend down before a dictator. But haven't they already?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I was in Iran before the revolution, when it was under the Shah.
Yes.
And I was impressed at how advanced they were as a nation. Mm-hmm. And especially seeing as I went through the border from Iran into Afghanistan, it was like going through a time warp, going from the present day into 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. But that was back then. And then, of course, the revolution came, and it seemed that it went from being an advanced society to a very suppressed society under the Shah and the Revolutionary Guard, they call it, right? So they already are under a dictatorship.
I would
They're
say
bowing down to a dictator.
Well, they do vote, but yeah, they have bowed down to dictators, yes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Mr. Trump's move to deny Iran's compliance with the deal courageous, saying the U.S. leader had boldly confronted Iran's terrorist regime. Saudi Arabia, a leading Sunni Muslim power and Shia majority, Iran's main rival in the Middle East, also threw its support behind Mr. Trump's stance. European officials pushed back, however, on his threat to scuttle the deal if his terms can't be satisfied. It's not a bilateral agreement. It does not belong to any single country, and it is not up to any single country to terminate. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini, told reporters. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the French President Macron, and Theresa May, whose countries are parties to the agreement, said in a joint statement they remain committed to the agreement and its full implementation by all sides. China, another party to the deal, has also signaled its desire to keep it intact, with Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying saying Tuesday it was in the interest of all sides to continue its implementation. A law passed in 2015 to give Congress oversight of the nuclear deal requires the president to tell Congress every 90 days whether Iran is complying. If the president doesn't do so, it triggers a 60-day process for lawmakers to weigh whether to reimpose sanctions under expedited consideration. However, Mr. Trump didn't call on Congress to reimpose sanctions immediately, and instead said he supported efforts of Republicans in Congress to craft legislation that would amend the 2015 U.S. oversight bill to reimpose sanctions on Iran if it violates enhanced and existing restrictions on its nuclear program. Senator Bob Corker, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has been working with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson on amending the oversight law. The Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, known in Washington as INARA. Senators Tom Cotton and Marco Rubio have also been involved in crafting the amended legislation. Mr. Corker, despite a public feud with Mr. Trump that has spilled into Twitter posts, said on Friday that he expects to introduce the legislation in the next week or two. Mr. Trump highlighted concerns with sunset clauses in the nuclear deal that allow nuclear restrictions to expire. Mr. Tillerson, briefing reporter, said the U.S. envisions a successor deal to address those concerns. A current draft of the bill also would change the frequency of presidential certification required from every quarter to twice a year. Oh, you know, the president's busy. Every 3 months this thing is coming up. What, again? Not this time, no. The legislative process is likely to require time and painstaking negotiations. Mr. Tillerson said he hoped Congress would amend the legislation before Mr. Trump next faces another certification deadline in January, but admitted the process wouldn't be a slam dunk. So basically, the significance of what Trump did yesterday may not be very much at all.
No.
Yeah.
He's really, in some ways, sounds like the Congress was already ready for this, with a plan in place.
Mm-hmm. Well, plan emerging in place, I guess.
Yeah.
Asked if the EU would be interested in negotiating a successor agreement, the EU foreign policy chief said the agreement is working, has been implemented, continues to be implemented. I would expect all sides to stick to it. So I guess she's saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it is broke. So I think it is broke. I think the problems with this have been pointed out by a number of people. Rio, let's go ahead all the way up to 8 o'clock with this one. The real problem with Trump's key problems. Oh yeah, here this is a Forbes article. Key problems of the Iran nuclear deal. This is key problems Trump needs to address on the Iran nuclear deal, and it lists some of them here. I've read this before. Uranium enrichment. Backers of the Iran deal maintain that the accord has put caps on Iran's nuclear program by limiting its enriched uranium stockpile, level of enrichment, and number of functional centrifuges. But all of these limits are predicated on hoping that the Iran regime will keep its word, which is not saying much. And the mere fact that an extremist regime and the leading state sponsor of terrorism is allowed to enrich uranium is in itself a failure. What's interesting is that before capitulating to Tehran, it was Obama administration's stated position that Iran has no right to enrich uranium. Iran could have perfectly achieved a peaceful nuclear energy program by purchasing fuel from the international market, and would have been cost less than maintaining a domestic enrichment program. Tehran's insistence on its inalienable right to enrichment further betrays its true intentions.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah,
Why would they want to
Yes.
be able to enrich their own?
that's a good point. Having a nuclear threshold state in the Middle East will only exacerbate tensions in the neighborhood and possibly drive other nations to pursue their own nuclear program to protect themselves in case Iran does away with its commitment and breaks away towards nuclear weapons. And the Sunset Clause, the JCPOA, that's the official name of the Iran nuclear deal, provisions a sunset clause which sets expiration dates on the limits imposed on Iran's nuclear program. This gives Iran the green light to extend its centrifuges beyond the current 6,000 limit after 10 years, and after 15 years it'll be free to grow its nuclear stockpile beyond the current 300 kilogram cap, as well as creating heavy water reactors which can generate weapons-grade plutonium. Even Obama admits that in 13, 14, and 15 in years 13, 14, and 15 of the deal, Iran's breakout time would have shrunk almost down to zero, which means if Iran decides to dash for the bomb, it would have it in no time. Proponents of the deal are hopeful. It's always nice to be hopeful.
It's good to be positive, right?
By then, the Iran regime will lose heart for pursuing nuclear bombs. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? We're hopeful that they'll lose heart to pursue nuclear bombs. Yes, we are hopeful. My goodness. These people, they want to destroy Israel. All right?
Yeah.
According to their religion, they've got to destroy Israel. All right? And nuclear bomb is kind of good for doing that.
Yes.
So they're not, we can be hopeful, but they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. However, statements by high Iranian authorities only prove that Tehran continues to entertain thoughts of restoring its nuclear program to its previous state and beyond. If the 4 decades past 4 decades are any indication, nothing short of regime change will deter the mullahs ruling Iran from their nuclear ambitions or other evil intentions meant to preserve their power. Sounds like a good point there, too. Following the forging of the pact, Obama stressed that the JCPOA does not rely on trust but on verification. The White House declared that under the new nuclear deal, Iran has committed to extraordinary, robust monitoring, verification, and inspection. But Iran's written commitment, the mechanisms put in place to verify Iran's compliance to the terms of the deal, are very weak. Under the accord, the task of policing Iran's nuclear activities will fall to the small band of IAEA inspectors who are supposed to have real-time access to Iran's declared nuclear sites. However, Iran strictly limited access to the long-suspected Parchin facility and proceeded with providing its own environmental samples of the site without inspectors physically present. It's like you have to do a drug test, but you provide your own urine.
Right. Hey, Auntie May, come over here and pee in this bottle for me.
And then the result comes back that you are postmenopausal. Anyway, the result of an alleged side deal between Washington and Tehran. I see. Moreover, should inspectors desire to investigate a new suspicious site, Iran can stall the process for up to 54 days, enough time to sanitize its site and remove evidence. Case in point, the IAEA's first and second quarterly reports on Iran's implementation of the nuclear deal provide less information on the regime's nuclear activities than the reports preceding the agreement, a fact that caused worry among U.S. senators who originally supported the deal. And let's not forget that Iran never officially ratified its adherence to the additional protocol, giving it yet another loophole in reneging on its obligations at its whim. Giving Iran's history at concealing its nuclear program, contrary to what Obama said, the current inspection regime puts too much trust in the Iranian regime. Let's see if there are any more problems. No, I guess not. Oh, yes, okay. Huh? Okay, here, coming clean. on past activities. Okay, we're almost out of time. Coming clean on past activities. Iran's other illicit activities. Facing the truth. These are just the subtitles here. Before and after signing the JCPOA, the Iranian regime has proven that it will not be a peaceful member of the international community. The ballistic missile test was just the latest episode and another wake-up call. All right, so Forbes makes a good point, a number of good points which show that President Trump was right in not certifying this, wondering why he certified it in the first 2 times already since his inauguration. But now Congress has one more thing that they can delay on and perhaps not act on. So then Trump will then have another certification coming up in January, and presumably he will not do that either. I hope he won't do that either. But he says that he can cancel it at any time. I still haven't seen the basis for that. Maybe he knows something I don't know. That's always possible. That is possible. But we hope that we already have a tinderbox in East Asia. The war on the Korean Peninsula can happen at any time, and also in the Middle East, war can happen at any time. We're living in a very dangerous world, but God bless and Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
Amen.